The man pressed the stopwatch. The clerk suddenly stops moving. The man steps forward to check. He stays bent over. It's like being frozen. He presses the stopwatch again. The clerk returns to his normal state and continued with his conversation. Curious, the man pressed it again, and the clerk was frozen again. Surely there's something strange about this stopwatch. It can immobilize people in the vicinity. The man didn't know what the watch was for. Just now, a drunk left his watch and left. He walked out of the tavern in a daze, back to his home. He looks at the goldfish and presses the stopwatch on them. He couldn't believe it. He thought he was drunk. So when he woke up, he tried again on the goldfish. The result was the same. He opened the curtains and pressed the stopwatch on the street. And then all the pedestrians and cars were immobilized. Looks like it's not just immobilizing people nearby. It can pause time. He then looks up at the helicopter. It can't escape the stopwatch either. Now he's got a treasure. Delighted, he went to the tavern. He tells the crowd he's got a treasure. They think he's drunk. No one paid any attention to this drunkard. Since no one believes him, he'll just do it. He pressed the stopwatch to stop the clock. The whirl. He messes up a fatty's hair. Then he went to the table and drank all the wine. Then he hit the stopwatch to reset the time. And everyone continued the same behavior, as if nothing had happened. No one wanted to listen to this psychopath. They all got up and left. The tavern clerk complained to him that he always ruined the business. He's a real pain in the ass. The man was about to explain. Then he suddenly realized if time is suspended, only he could feel it. No one else would be able to sense it. Then he ordered a beer. The clerk was still complaining. Turns around and puts the money in the cash box. He looked at the money in his hand. Suddenly he had a bold idea. Maybe he could do something great with the stopwatch. Since everyone didn't believe him and disliked him, tomorrow he'd get the money to buy the tavern. He went straight into the crowded bank. He waltzed up to the counter and pressed the stopwatch. The world again. Everyone stood still. He goes behind the counter, pulls open the vault door, and walks right in. A few minutes later, he rolls out a cart full of money, then closed the vault door behind him. Without forgetting to take the money from the counter, he pushes the cart out the door. Suddenly he trips. As he reaches the exit, the stopwatch fell to the floor. He picked it up in a hurry, but when he pushed the button, there was no change in his surroundings. The crowd is still frozen. He tries again. The stopwatch seems to have been broken. Time can't be restored. Now he's the only one who can move. He panics and runs outside the bank. The whole street is frozen in place. He looks like he's screwed up. He goes back to the tavern. Inside, it's the same situation. He tried desperately to wake them up, but no one responded. Now he doesn't have to steal money. Everything in the world was his. This man who wanted to get rich overnight became the loneliest guy on earth. An old man selling trinkets pushed his way in. He walks up to a woman and asked her if she needed anything. The woman thought for a moment and asked for a box of matches, and the old man pressed the woman's hand. "You don't need matches," he says. "I'll tell you what you need." Then he handed the woman a bottle of cleaning fluid. The woman didn't understand what he was trying to do, but she took it anyway. Then the old man came to a disillusioned man. The old man asked him what he needed. The man shook his head and said, "I need a brand new left arm." The bartender explains. This man used to be a pitcher for a baseball team. He was a very good pitcher, but a few years ago his left arm suddenly lost its accuracy. Now he can only rely on alcohol to numb himself. Thinking about his baseball career, the old man thought for a while. He handed the man a ticket to Pennsylvania. While both the bartender and the man were puzzled, a phone call to the man rang in the bar. It turned out to be a call from the man's former coach. He said he had a job on the team and wanted to talk to him about it. He wanted him to arrive immediately.
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
This is exactly the same address as the old man's ticket. The man was in a much better mood. He wished he had some way to get the stains out of his clothes and be neat enough to meet the manager. The woman from the beginning of this story overhears this. So she approached the man. She wipes the man's clothes with the cleaning solution the old man gave her. Their eyes meet, and there's even a spark of love between them. While Renia was quietly watching, he thinks there's something strange about it and is suspicious of the old man. Soon after, Renier went out of the bar. He found the old man on the street and approached him. He asked the old man what he needed. The old man didn't really want to give him anything. But after being pressed by Renier, he picked up a pair of scissors and held them in front of him. Renier was skeptical. He didn't believe that a pair of scissors would be of any use, but the old man insisted that they were just what he needed. So Renier took the scissors and went home. He got on the elevator as usual, without noticing that his scarf was caught in the door. When the elevator started, he realized it, but it was too late. He couldn't stop the elevator or get help. In desperation, he took out scissors and cut the scarf. That's how he got out of danger. After his escape, Renier muttered to the scissors, "Yes, that's what I need." One day after that, the old man came home from work as usual. He was surprised to find Renier waiting for him. Renier was originally a poor, depressed, middle-aged man. After discovering the old man's supernatural powers, he saw him as a lifesaver, but the old man didn't like this insatiable man. But Renier had already broken into his house, and he's not going to stop. The old man could only pick up a pen and hand it to him. Renier didn't understand. He opened the cap. The pen showed a few drops of ink. Renier was about to lose his temper, but the ink landed on the name of a racehorse in the newspaper, and the date of the race was tomorrow. Renier didn't suddenly realize the whole whole thing. By betting on the horse, he made $240. Renier looked at the bed full of bills. She was going to use this leaky pen to predict every race, but as soon as she opened the cap, she realized the pen was out of ink.
Bill was just having a chat with his superiors, but he learned a shocking news that the world is coming to an end, because within 48 hours, the world will go crazy with a hydrogen bomb war, and they're going to strike first, and everything will be destroyed. As a hydrogen bomb scientist, Bill didn't want to be a sitting duck. He had his wife invite his pilot buddy over. His erratic behavior confused Lena, and after much questioning, Bill told her the truth, and that they would be escaping tonight. When asked where they were going, Bill chose to keep it a secret. He told Lena not to tell anyone, even to friends and family. When Jerry arrived, on purpose, Bill just talked nonsense. When Jerry tried to talk about the escape plan, Bill cut him off. He asked loudly if his watch was broken. Jerry understood instantly. He took out his watch, because they were being watched as scientists. In order to communicate their plans secretly, Bill deliberately turned on the machine to create a noisy environment, and then he pretended to be fixing the watch. Jerry told Bill that they'd have to move up the schedule, because the guards he'd paid were suddenly replaced. Now they're in danger. When they confirmed their plan to leave, the eavesdropper, Carlin, popped his head out. Apparently, he was already suspicious, and he's looking for evidence of Bill's escape. At night, the two families sat down to a game of cards, to pass the long hours. Bill gave a suggestive look, and Lena knew exactly what he meant. She rushed Tina away. Then Jerry took out the flight path plans. They were going to a planet 11 million miles away. It's a big adventure for them. No one could be sure the ship would make it there safely, but they had no choice. Jerry said the planet must be inhabited, because they had received radio waves in a language similar to theirs, and it could be deciphered. While they were chatting, Karin came to the door. Jerry rushed to put the drawings back on the table. After some pleasantries, Karin tried to take it when they weren't looking. Jerry blocked it with his hand. He was writing numbers on a piece of paper, and told him that Bill owed him a lot of money.
Here we are. Lemonade, everyone?
Very nervous.
But Carlin got a chance to get it. He kept looking at it, and looked at the two men's faces. Jerry and Bill were both very nervous. Carlin kept reading the numbers on the paper. Jerry tries to get it back, but it's dodged. Luckily, Karin didn't look at the reverse side of the paper. He found nothing unusual and left. Bill felt sure that Karin was suspicious of them. They had to act now, but just as they were about to leave, the phone rang. Bill was so nervous, he lied about being asleep, but Carlin insisted he work late tonight, and he'd send a car for him right away. That left them even less time. They rushed to the airport, and saw the ship. A flashlight flickered on at the airport. Jerry warned the driver, get the lights to come on. This was the signal for their docking. Soon a figure came toward them. Surprisingly, it was Karin. Obviously, this guy knew about the escape plan. At this point, Bill and Jerry were confused. Karin took the gun, ordered everyone to get out the car, to meet with the authorities. They were forced to comply. When Carlin wasn't looking, Tina suddenly knocked his gun out of his hand. Jerry and Bill quickly overpowered him. After removing this obstacle, they opened the gate and drove closer to the ship. Unluckily, the alarm was triggered. They had to move as fast as they could. When they arrived, they disconnected the fuel line. Just as they were boarding, the guards arrived. Luckily for the men, they've all seen boxing. They took care of the guards with ease, and launched the ship without a hitch. Jerry and Bill looked out the window at the night sky, and saw the planet they were going to, and marveled at how lucky they were to find a planet where people live. It was the third closest planet to the sun. They called it Earth. An antique airplane landed at a modern airport. Ground crews immediately intercepted it. The pilot looks around in amazement. When did airports become so advanced? Then he climbs out of the cockpit. He's wearing an old-fashioned flight suit. The soldiers thought he was doing an air show. Then he was taken to the chief's office. The officer asked him why he dressed so strangely. The man says it's his Air Force uniform. The officer said he must be shooting a movie, but the man was serious and said he belonged to the Royal Flying Corps, and that he was a British pilot. But that's impossible. It was disbanded decades ago. The officer is skeptical. The man said he landed here according to the flight map. This is supposed to be 56 Squadron. That's even worse. 56 Squadron was a World War I Air Force formation.
What's today's date?
March the 5th.
What year?
1917.
They're all staring at the man in disbelief. Tell him it's 1959. He's having a hard time accepting this. They thought the man was talking nonsense, but seeing the advanced fighters out the window, the man realizes there's a complication. He said he just flew the plane through that cloud. Suddenly he couldn't hear anything. It was like being sucked into a vacuum, and then he landed here. The officer has had enough of his bullshit. He thinks he's a spy. The man says rightly that he took off with his buddy Mike this morning. The officer says Mike is the current commander, and he's on the way to the production base. The man thinks he's full of shit, because Mike was dead. The officer doesn't want to hear any more of his bullshit, confiscated his belongings, and locked him up, watching modern warplanes whiz by in the sky. He had no idea what was going on. The soldier questioned if he knew General Mike, but he was able to say Mike's nickname, a name known only to a few. The soldier still didn't believe him. He asked what Mike died of. The man said before he went through the clouds, Mac was surrounded by 3 enemy planes. There's no way he survived, but the soldier told him that Mike did. He was one of the best pilots of World War I. He's been awarded numerous medals, and he'll be here soon for an inspection. The man suddenly panicked. He turned and ran. The guards at the gate stopped him. The soldier is more than sure he's a liar. He said that when General Mike meets you face to face, and the truth will come out. The man insisted he didn't want to see Mike, because he ran away from an enemy plane. That's why he went into that cloud, leaving Mike alone in front of the enemy planes. He couldn't face his brother again. The soldier said maybe Mike had waited for reinforcements. The man suddenly realized something. He found a way to get out of there. General Mike's helicopter is about to land. He found his own plane, moved the propeller, starts the engine. He quickly boards the old airplane. As he was about to launch, the soldier puts a gun to his head. The man still insisted on going. He said he had reasons why he had to go. Eventually, the soldiers let him go. The plane quickly rose and took off, heading straight for the clouds. Then it disappeared into the clouds. General Mack came into the office. Soldier asks him if he knows a man named Deco. The general told him of course he did. He's a good friend of his, and he saved his life. Once they were on patrol when 3 enemy planes came in. At first, Deco pulled up and disappeared into the clouds, but he came back soon after. Like a god of war, he kept firing at the enemy planes. After taking out 3 planes, he was shot and killed. The general asked how you knew about Deco. The officer took out the man's belongings. It was his pilot's license. Mac also recognizes his buddy's pocket watch.
Where in heaven's name did you get these? Maybe you'd better sit down, old lead bottom.
The soldier calls General Mack by his nickname. At that moment, Deco was returning to the skies for his buddy. Maybe he's a hero too. The man took a picture of his wife, but she's wearing a fur coat in the picture. They thought it was a camera malfunction, but the wife pulled a coat out of an antique trunk. She ran to the window and posed, and that's exactly what she looks like in the photo. The men's jaws dropped. They decided to try again. This time the wife pressed the shutter on the front door, and in the photo a young man is pushing his way in. He's the woman's brother, but he can't be there at all. He's been arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison. The man senses something strange about the camera. Then there was a noise at the door, and it's the woman's brother. He had escaped from prison to join his sister. The couple was so surprised that they couldn't speak, because his posture was exactly the same as in the photo. They had a discussion. Since it can take pictures 5 minutes later, they decided to do something big with it. While the couple was still thinking about the future, her brother turned on the TV. There's a horse racing program on. The man suddenly stood up with excitement, since they could know everything in 5 minutes later. If they go to bet on horse racing, they'd be sure to win. So they gathered all the money they had, and went to the racetrack to show off their skills. When they arrived, they counted the time and took a picture of the scoreboard. In a few moments, they saw the results. The number 6 horse had won. The men rushed to place their bets. Then the race begins. Number 6 starts slowly, but just before the wire, he suddenly accelerates to win the race. They're screaming with excitement, and the scoreboard looks just like the one in the photo. They decided to go ahead and bet. This time they've got a lot of money. All they had to do was take another picture. The money would be in their pockets. And so it went on, round after round. They bet more and more. All the judgments were accurate, and they're so busy counting the money. Back home at night, the men ordered a sports car. With this camera, the poor guys had finally turned the corner. Then the waiter came to take away the dishes. He was curious to see the camera on the table. The man told him to be careful not to break it, but the waiter said that after 10 pictures the camera would be unusable. What does that mean?
10 à la propriétaire. That means 10 to an owner.
The man was in a panic. Then he sends the waiter away. They started counting. 2 test shots in the room, and 6 more at the horse track. So they only had 2 more chances. The man decides to go for the big one tomorrow. The wife wants to save it for the future. The brother said he'd sell the camera. They get into an argument, and during the fight, they accidentally hit the shutter. Another wasted photo. The man was furious. When the picture came out, the wife seemed to be screaming.
You think she's screaming, Woodward? Tell you why she's screaming. She's screaming because somebody's trying to do something to her husband.
He pulls out a knife. Since the camera predicts something bad will happen, he might as well go ahead and do it himself. He pushed his wife away and stepped closer to her brother. They pushed to the window. Soon they were fighting. In the midst of pushing and shoving, they fell out of the window together. The woman also posed as in the photo. She was devastated by the loss of both of them.
However, we must muddle through these things. We must live with tragedy.
She picked up the camera and went to the window.
Be for posterity. May you both rest in peace.
She's about to take the money and leave when the waiter comes in. It turns out he'd been listening in on the conversation. Then he was going to take the money for himself. The woman wanted to call the police. The waiter says she's harboring a fugitive, and the cops will come for her first. Then he swiped the loot. He even took the bag from her. He picked up the photos and said there were more than 2 bodies in there. When the woman tried to go to the window, she tripped over a wire and fell out.
Yes, there are more than 2 bodies down there. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Christian went over a hill in the desert. He sees something not of his time. Living in 1847, he was terrified. He turned to go back, but the caravan that was behind him vanished into thin air. He had no choice but to head back down the hill. In front of him was a flat tarmac road, which he had never seen before in his time. At first, he thought it was some ancient relic. In the distance, there was a roar. A truck roars past. He dodged for cover. He'd never seen such a fast wagon before. Then he headed down the highway. Soon he came upon a signpost. He couldn't understand a word it said. When he entered the gas station, the gas pumps made him more confused than ever. Joe called out to him. He saw that Christian had a wound on his hand. He had hit it while trying to avoid the truck. So Joe invited him into the store, said his wife could help him treat the wound. When he entered the diner, the furnishings inside were an eye-opener. Joe handed him a glass of water. He hadn't had water this clean in a year. The purpose of his trip was to find water. Mary cleans up his wounds. He asked why there were no Indians here. Mary said they'd moved away long ago. Even the ones that are left are not enemies. Christian walks around the restaurant. Everything around him is confusing.
There's a jukebox.
Joe asked him where he was going. Christian said they were driving 3 wagons from Ohio to California. They've been in the desert for almost a year. Now they can't find water. Everyone's dying of thirst. Joe told him there was a spring not far west. Mary brought him penicillin. Knowing this little thing could cure him, Christian immediately thought of his feverish son. He asked Mary for a bottle, said his son was waiting for him. But when he turned around, he saw the calendar. The illustration on it was of his wagon train, and the date on it was September 1961. Holly Fork. He's from 1847, and now he's traveling 120 years later.
Who are you? What am I? Where is this place?
Joe called a doctor. After a thorough examination, although Christian was severely malnourished, but his body was very strong. And what's even stranger, Christian had 2 decayed teeth, and the fillings inside were not made by today's dentists. And Christian mentioned his sick son, and judging by his description, his son probably just had a cold. The doctor said Christian's a strange guy. They'd better call the sheriff. Then Christian said he saw his son's name in an encyclopedia. Chris Horn, Jr., Doctor of Medicine, pioneer in penicillin research. Born in 1839 in Ohio, died in California in 1914. And that's when Christian suddenly realized, maybe he was here for a reason. He turned to leave. The doctor stopped him. He said the sheriff would be here soon to help. And when he heard that, he broke away and ran out the door of the diner. He ran straight for the hills. When he came to the foot of the hill, the sheriff came after him. Christian ran quickly toward the top of the hill. The sheriff and Joe were in hot pursuit. As Christian crossed the dunes, he saw his wagon again, and turned his head to look behind it. The highway and the car were gone. At first he thought he was dreaming. Maybe he was too tired. But when he saw the medicine and the bandaged wound, he realized it was all real. He asked where everyone had gone. The wife says it's only been a few minutes since Christian left. They stayed right where they were till then. Christian gave his wife the penicillin and explained how to take it. The sheriff returns to the restaurant with Joe. Joe retrieved the man's gun. It was new at the store, and Joe picked it up as soon as Christian dropped it. But now it looked like an antique. Even the stock had weathered off. Christian continues on his way to find water. His son worries if they'll die of thirst in the desert, but Christian smiled and said nothing. 4 idiots robbed a truckload of gold bars. They decided to go into hibernation so they wouldn't get caught, just sleep for 100 years, and wake up when the world has forgotten about it. Then they could enjoy a luxurious life. Time flew by. They woke up one after another, but they were still the same. Even their hair and nails hadn't grown. They suspected that hibernation had failed. They went out of the cave and found that not much had changed. The highway was still there. Curly lost his temper. He said maybe they'd only slept a few hours. Then Fatty realized someone else hadn't woken up. They get there and find the hatch broken by a rock. The companion had been reduced to a skeleton, the death of this unlucky man, which means that 100 years have passed. Seems like they can enjoy the new world if they get the gold out of here. They quickly load the gold bars into the car. Before leaving, Curly told his partner to get a bucket. As he walked away, Curly quickly gets into the car and starts to accelerate. He pushes the gas pedal to the floor. After finishing off his companion, the car suddenly stopped working. Seeing the car is about to go off the cliff, Curly jumped out of the car. The car rolled down the cliff with all the gold. Fatty ran to the edge of the cliff. He didn't blame Curly, because now he could get more gold. Without the vehicle, they had to walk to a nearby town. The desert was scorching hot. Soon, Fatty couldn't go any further. They sat down to rest. Fatty said, "It's been 100 years. What if the human race is now extinct? No matter how rich they are, it's useless." At that moment, an aircraft flew over the sky. Seems like his worries were unwarranted. Then Curly took out his kettle and drank it. Fatty went to look in his bag, but he lost his. Fatty was dying of thirst. Curly said he had water. Fatty was about to reach for it. Curly said, "It's okay to drink water, but a gold bar for a sip of water." Unwilling to but, in order to survive, he still took out a gold bar. He took the kettle, just took a sip. Then the kettle was taken away. Then they continued on their way. The sun was scorching the earth. They didn't meet a single car on the road. Fatty couldn't hold out again. The trade continued. but Curly only let him drink a little bit each time, and so it went on for several times. Fatty paid for his life. Curly made money from the water. Fatty's gold bars are getting less and less. Curly's backpack is getting heavier and heavier. Once again, Fatty wants to trade again, but Curly took a big gulp of his own. He said there wasn't much water left. It's time to raise the price. 2 gold bars for a sip of water. Fatty emptied his backpack, but there were only 3 gold bars left. He picked up 2 of them. Curly handed him the kettle. Fatty poured it into his mouth. Curly was in a frenzy. Now all the gold is his. When Curly wasn't looking, Fatty instantly rose up. He hit Curly with gold bars, so the greedy Curly went offline. Then Fatty continued his journey, but due to the heavy weight of the gold, he soon ran out of energy. He didn't even want the gold that had fallen. After drinking all the water, Fatty collapsed. Then a stranger found him, holding the gold. Fatty begged for help. He said that if he brought himself to the town, he promised to give him a gold bar.
It's real gold. You can have it.
But before he could drink any water, Fatty also went offline. The man picked up the bar and showed it to his wife. He said the fat man seemed to value gold very highly. Wife says it was worth something 100 years ago, but what good is it now? So he throws the worthless metal on the ground and got in his car and left. If the man can be silent for a year, the rich man will give him $500,000. Such a simple bet. Of course the man was happy to do it. He was put in a glass room, under constant supervision. He's free to choose his own entertainment. Food and wine were plentiful. For the first 2 months, he lived a very comfortable life. He even found it enjoyable rather than a challenge. And the reason for this ridiculous gamble, because the rich man thought he was too noisy. They were in the same club. Every time they met, he kept on talking. That made the rich man very uncomfortable, so he decided to humiliate him. At first, the rich man's best friend warned him not to take the bet so lightly. He knew the rich man well. He never did anything he wasn't sure of, but the man didn't listen. He thought a year of silence was easy, so he was sure to win the bet. Even if he lost, he had nothing to lose. 9 months passed. He still hasn't said a word. During that time, the rich man had tempted him countless times. This time he told him that if they ended the bet right now, he would give him $1,000. Then he could leave immediately. The young man refused. It's been a long time. He didn't give in so easily. Then he wrote a note on a post-it. So the rich man tried to psychologize him again. He said the man's wife was beautiful. She must be very lonely right now. She hasn't visited him once in months. She hasn't even answered his letters.
You may lose your wife, Tennyson. I hope you're fully aware of that. Why don't you leave right now?
These words really hurt the man. He knew the rich man was probably lying to him, but he still suspected his wife. His life got worse. He started to lose his mind. All day long, he thought about nothing. Another 2 months passed. He lost a lot of weight. That day, the rich man came to visit again. He continued to tell him about his wife's affair. He told him to end the drama today. He promised him $5,000. The man began to waver. He's struggling inside. The rich man continues.
$6,000. You're an idiot. You know that, Tennyson? I know you are. You're ready to crawl up the walls.
Eventually the man's senses prevailed. He claims there's only a month left. He could hold out no matter what. On the day the game ends, all the members of the club are gathered here, waiting to see how the rich man would end it. But he's still confident and says it's not time yet. The crowd was on the side of the young man. They thought the rich man was too cocky. The young man was stronger than they thought. The clock struck 10, and the 2 men's bet was over. The young man walked slowly into the hall. The crowd applauded him, and in the presence of all, he's done it. He spread his palms and asked the rich man for the promised money. At this point, he still didn't say a word, but the rich man did something unexpected. He said he couldn't get that kind of money. He's already broke. He couldn't even come up with the $1,000 he'd promised. The young man was angry and frustrated. The tycoon said he lost the bet. He would quit the club immediately. The young man stopped him, but he didn't say a word. The people around told him it was all over. Now it's time to talk. But he took out a notepad and wrote something on it and handed it to the rich man. Everyone wondered what he had written.
I knew I would not be able to keep my part of the bargain. I had the nerves to my vocal cords severed.
The rich man had lost his reputation. The young man lost his ability to speak. So who won the bet? The man picks up a tiny object. When he zooms in, it turns out to be a truck. He brings the captain to the place where the truck was found. There's a miniature city built in the clearing. There are highways and houses, cars and little people running along the roads. The planet's environment is similar to Earth's. The inhabitants of it are just like humans, but they're 10,000 times smaller. And on closer inspection, the tiny people have built a dock on the shore, on a few square meters of empty space. A whole alien civilization. The men found this place a week ago and tried to communicate with them. Although they're small, but they're very intelligent and they're evolving rapidly. The men taught them what they knew on Earth. In just a few days, the group has evolved from an agricultural civilization to industrial society. They even regarded the man as a god, offering him food and wine. Just yesterday, he even ate their entire forest. The captain told him, "Don't spend too much time here. The priority is to fix the ship and leave immediately." The men didn't agree.
Only just begun.
Begun what?
You think I've got here now?
A whole race of little people who look up to me like a giant out of the sky.
He enjoys his power as a ruler. The feeling of being on top fascinated him. The captain told him not to interfere with other civilizations, but he says he is the one who evolved the civilization. He could decide whether they lived or died. As he talked, he crushed the alien's house. He wanted to prove to the captain he's the master of this place. The captain got angry and knocked him out. After all this, the city's buildings were severely damaged, and lots of micronauts were killed. A small whale came from the ground. The captain crouched down and kept saying sorry. Then the captain repaired the ship, but the man was gone. The captain went to the valley to find him. He saw that the aliens had built a statue in the man's likeness. It was a huge project for them. And then the man appeared. He said that as a god, to be a god, he told the aliens to worship the statue every day and produce a huge food supply for him. The captain said he must be crazy and told him to leave immediately because there are only 15 minutes left before the launch of the ship, but he suddenly raised his gun and told the captain to go alone. The captain tried to talk him down.
You're still here, 8 minutes from now. This is a monotheistic society here. Just room for one god.
The captain had no choice but to leave. The man placed his helmet on the ruined statue. Now the world was his alone. He stepped on the miniature city with abandon and told his subjects to obey him from now on. Then there was a roar in the distance. It's the captain's ship taking off. The man waves his arms in triumph. Then he lifts the statue and smashes it into the ground. The aliens begged for mercy. He laughs maniacally and warns them not to anger him so easily.
There must be discipline here. Discipline above all.
Then the sounds of another ship landing in the distance. It must be another ship coming to the planet. He told them to be quiet. Maybe in a few days the strange visitors will leave. He then hid in the shadows. A louder rumbling sound came from far away. He looked up. Holy shift. Two giants have appeared above the valley. The man panicked. He yelled for them to go away.
Go away! I'm the god! I'm the god!
The giants heard him. They grabbed him in their hands. They crushed him into a hamburger patty.
Come on, let's get out of here.
The man was just performing as usual, but his puppet was spinning its head uncontrollably. This moment made the audience laugh. In fact, the man was already sweating profusely, but no one could see that he was panicking. So Jerry found an excuse to leave the stage. But even more bizarrely, the puppet actually started to ask the audience for help.
Help! I'm being kidnapped! Call a lawyer! Call a doctor! Never mind! Just get me to the nurse on time!
At this point, Jerry couldn't care less about the pain. He hurried to the restroom to put Willie down, and then tried to calm his fears, looking at the deep bite marks on his hands. He realized that this was not an illusion, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. Just as he was wondering, he looked up and realized Willie's eyes were staring at him. Jerry jerked back in fear. Willie was still in the same position. This strange sight made Jerry panic. He rushed to have a drink to calm his nerves. However, he looked up to find Willie staring at him again. As Jerry hesitated to run away, the boss walked in, seeing Jerry drinking again during work hours. He came right up to him and reprimanded him. "If I see you again, you're out of here." Jerry had no choice but to face the boss's reprimand. He had to get away from Willie. He told him what had just happened, but the boss thought Jerry was mentally ill. He must supposed to be delusional, but Jerry insisted he was healthy. It was Willie who had the problem. Jerry didn't want to argue with his boss anymore, but he demanded that Jerry continue the show, or he wouldn't get paid a dime. Seeing that the boss was so tough, Jerry knew there was no point in saying anything, but he did ask that he had to get a new puppet. The boss was quick to agree. In his opinion, these puppets don't make any difference, as long as they could finish the show on time. Jerry picked up the new puppet and rehearsed. He named it Goofy, but just as he turned around, Willie was staring at him again. And what's worse, he was winking at him. Jerry angrily picked up the mirror and smashed it over. But what he didn't know his impending doom. Then Jerry took Goofy to the stage without Willie's interference. The show went smoothly, and Jerry felt more relaxed than ever. Then Jerry went back to the lounge with excitement. Then he threw Willie into the wooden box. He slammed the lid shut and locked it up, and was ready to take Goofy and leave town. But just as he reached the door of the club, suddenly he hears something creepy.
You're not gonna leave me in a stuffy old trunk, are ya?
A young girl was riding a horse in the wilderness. Suddenly found a strange woman in black appeared on the hillside, staring fiercely at her and shouting her name. Annie saw her coming. She felt the danger approaching, so she ran towards her home in a hurry. The woman in black was chasing after her, telling her to wait. Annie had no choice but to charge forward. After a fierce chase, the woman in black suddenly stopped and watched as her prey escaped. Back at the manor, Anne's panic struck her parents and her fiancée, Paulette. They asked what had happened. Then her father, Desank, called the police. According to what Annie said, Paulette thought it might be some kind of warning to Anne. He joked that that maybe the woman wanted them to cancel the wedding tonight.
That's not funny.
At that moment, the doorbell rang. A man came in, and it was Annie's ex-boyfriend Mill. Because he knew about Annie's upcoming wedding, he wanted to ask for confirmation. DeSank stopped him. He asked him how he could give it up. Seeing Mill come to the door, Paulette was a little upset. He asked Annie if it was over with Mill, but Anne was a bit flustered at the moment. Said she just didn't want to talk to Mill. She wanted to leave, but Mill told her it wasn't too late. Annie was in a difficult position. She didn't know what to say. Apparently, she was still a little bit sad about Mill, and that's when DeSank urged Mir to go. Otherwise, in a minute, he's gonna sue Mill for trespassing. Mill urged Anne not to be forced by DeSank to make a decision against her will. It's not too late. She can still get an annulment, and he would marry her. Angrily, DeSank pulled out his gun, and Annie went upstairs to hide. Mill reluctantly left. Years passed. Annie's clothes weren't so young anymore. Her face was wrinkled. She became obsessed with alcohol. Mother said they were losing the manor to someone else, but she didn't care. Annie thought the house was a bird cage, and she was the bird. She couldn't breathe with all the love they gave her. She blamed DeSank for her own misery. Her mother thought she was slandering DeSank.
Marie.
Although DeSank had always given her everything and raised her as a child, but 25 years ago he drove Mill away, ruined her life for the next 25 years. Then Annie said she saw a ghost today. It looked just like her. That's herself on the engagement day when she was 18, which is why the police never found the woman in black. She realized now that Polly's joke had come true. She's become the ghost she was 25 years ago. Not only is she infertile, and her husband had made a mess of the estate. That's when Paulette appeared and said DeSanker had been buried. He was now the master of the manor. Anne acted like she didn't give a damn, which made Paulette very unhappy. He reminded Anne to respect him. After all, she was the love of his life. Suddenly the time went back 25 years. On the night of the wedding, Annie asked Pauline to get her coat for her. As Pauline left, Miller appeared not far away. He kept waving. Annie rushed over to him. They embraced in an excited and happy embrace. Mill asked Annie to come with him, and Annie said yes, because Mir was her true love. Then they left. Paulette, who had arrived, could only watch their backs. But the cruel truth was that was all in Anne's imagination. She woke up and threw the wine in Paulette's face, then ran quickly out of the house. She rode up the hill, waiting for her 18-year-old self to appear, and when she came, Annie shouted her name, but it frightened her 18-year-old self. She rode off in a hurry. Annie was right behind her. She wanted to tell herself everything about the future, but unfortunately, her efforts were doomed to failure, because the future's warning to the past must be accepted in the past. For Annie, it would be a continuous cycle. Peyton was about to be hanged, but he was calm, thinking of a way to escape. He measured the height above the water of the bridge, then looked around him. There were soldiers with guns everywhere. Not only were the sides of the bridge guarded, there were also soldiers on the hillside, and not far away, there were cannons standing by. In order to be absolutely sure, the soldiers tied his hands and feet tightly. At that moment, the officer looked at the position of the sun. It's almost time. He signaled the soldiers to get on the pedals. This was the end of the line. Peyton knew the chances of escaping were slim to none. He closed his eyes in despair. He couldn't help but think of his wife and daughter. They were waiting for him to come home, and that made it even harder for him to die. Suddenly, the soldiers shook him awake. The clock was taken out of his pocket. Then the officer took it for himself, thinking he was going to die soon. Peyton became nervous. He was shivering all over. He twisted his hands as hard as he could, but it was in vain. At the signal of the gallows officer, the soldier quickly released the pedal, but the next moment the rope snapped. Peyton fell into the water. He was disoriented for a moment. When he reacted, he began to struggle. First, he untied his hands. Then he took the rope off his neck. At this point, he could no longer hold his breath. He swam towards the water. When he realized he couldn't hold his breath, he realized that his legs were still tied. He could only work with his hands and feet to break free. He even threw out his shoes. After swimming out of the water, he breathed heavily. After calming his mind and body, he looked around at the lush greenery and the usually insignificant bugs. Feeling the true meaning of life, Peyton wanted nothing more than to live, but soon the soldiers found him. The officers ordered him to be fired upon at all costs. They even used artillery to kill him. When Peyton realized he was being targeted, he had to swim downstream through the hail of bullets. He was in grave danger. Fire! Bullets were hitting Peyton's side. When he was still swimming, the soldiers began to use artillery to bombard him. The shells fell on Peyton's side. Luckily, he only fainted for a few seconds, and then he woke up again. He's been swimming for a long time. Gradually, the sound of gunfire began to diminish. The sound was getting farther away. When he reached the fastest part of the river, he began to swim with the current. After a bumpy ride, he finally came to a flat, low spot and slumped helplessly on the sand. He looked at his injured hand. The pain told him that he was still alive. He was ecstatic, and he kept splashing the sand, celebrating his survival, and he rolled around on the beach and howled loudly. He'd probably never been so scared and happy in his life. Then he crawled over to the flowers and pulled a blooming flower to his face and reveled in it. Probably the best smelling flower he'd ever smelled in his life. Soon a shell fell nearby. This forced him to continue his escape. Even though he was so tired that he couldn't even open his eyes, he didn't dare to stop. Even when he fell, fell, he pushed on with the last of his strength. Finally, he saw the gate of his own manor. He smiled and pushed on with all his strength. Peyton finally saw his wife. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. Peyton was about to wipe away her tears, but suddenly a strong force pulled him down. Peyton is now suspended in the air, and all of this, it was all a fantasy that he had before he died. Drunk Millie wakes up to find herself in stockings, and she was in a strange room. Only her husband Bob is still with her. None of them knew where they were. Bob tried to call for help, but there's no connection at all. Millie couldn't pull the drawer, and Bob gave it a yank and broke it. There was a solid wood panel behind it. It turns out the cabinet is only cosmetic. Then he opened the refrigerator. The food in there was all props. At that moment, a child's laughter came from outside. They went outside to look for it, but the street was empty, and the sound disappeared. Millie saw a squirrel in a tree. It wasn't moving. She touched it, and it fell off the branch. Turns out, it was just a stuffed toy. Bob then went to knock on the door, but a long time passed, and no one answered. It was as if they were the only ones in town. Bob said it was Sunday. Maybe everyone's at church. So they found the town church, but there's still no one inside. Bob shook the bell on the church. It made a loud noise. Millie ran outside to check it out. The bell didn't bring out any of the residents. Now they're in a panic.
Where'd everybody go?
There isn't anybody. Just us.
Then another child's laugh came. It seemed to come from the sky. Nothing in the town seemed real. Even the trees on the roadside are decorations. Bob lit a cigarette for his wife. A match thrown to the ground sets the lawn on fire. Bob stomps out the fire. Then he looks at the lawn that's on fire. Sure enough, it's fake too. It's made of a flammable material. They continue to explore the strange town and found a car on the street with the driver still in it. Bob went up to ask about it, but when the door opened, he found that the driver was a dummy. Bob gets angry and says it must be a hoax. He yelled and screamed, but there was still no response. So they get ready to drive away, but the car won't start. Bob lifts the hood and realizes there's no engine in it. Even if it was a prank, it's a very serious scene. They reminisced about what happened before. Millie was driving home that night. Bob was drunk on the seat. She vaguely remembers there was a shadow over the car, and then she couldn't remember anything else. Did they have an accident? And this place is the afterlife. Suddenly there was a train whistle. They searched for it and came to the train station. There was no one at the train station, but there was a train on the tracks. They got into the train, thought they'd finally get out of this hellhole. Soon the train starts to speed up. They comforted each other that maybe the town was just a base for a movie. Soon the train comes to the next stop, Holly Shift, the station where they got on the train. They're back. They're coming out of the train. Nothing around them has changed. Then a huge shadow appeared in the sky, and it's coming down on them. To avoid it, they were running down the street. Suddenly, Millie twisted her foot. The shadow comes again. It turned out to be a big hand. It grabbed them both in the air. A little girl giggles at them. She was standing in front of a model town. She looked at the two little people in the hand with curiosity.
Be careful with your pets, dear. Daddy brought them all the way from Earth.
Oh, can I play with them, Mommy?
After lunch, dear. Right now, put them back.
Then she threw the couple into the model town. Never imagined that humans on Earth would one day be the pets of aliens. Puppy was run over by a wagon. The man said he could bring it back to life. He told the people to turn back, and then he said an incantation. Then the puppy came back to life. Everyone couldn't believe it. The man said it was nothing. He could bring people back from the dead. Everyone's dead relatives came back to life. The villagers were so excited, they begged the man to bring them back. The man said that at tonight's midnight o'clock, he would bring back all the dead in the town. Villagers who've lost their families gather at the tavern. The man was seen drumming in the graveyard, and then he finally showed up, drinking a glass of whiskey. He says he's met with all the dead. They'll come back to life and be here in 5 minutes. Look at the mural on the wall. The bartender said it was his brother. He died unexpectedly last March. Man asks if he looks like him, and then a fat guy with a limp. Bingo. He goes on to say that the fat guy was the last to be buried, so he'd be the first to come to the tavern. He's on his way now. They all look out. A fat, limping man is walking toward the tavern, although it's a bit far away, but everyone recognized him as the bartender's brother. But then the bartender suddenly panicked. He said his brother was a thief. He had caused him a lot of trouble. He asked if he could keep his brother in his grave, and promised the man $500. The man says it's a complicated process. It costs $1,000. They haggled and settled for $750. With the deal done, the fat guy goes offline. Everybody returns to the tavern. The man says it's all the bartender's idea. Next up is the farmer's wife. She'll be coming for him soon. The farmer's face has changed. He said his wife used to play WWE with him. She even broke his left arm and it's still not healed. He didn't want his dead wife to come back too. He asked if he could pay for it. The man says $500. The farmer paid it. Then the sheriff came out. He yelled at them for being selfish, that they were selfish to leave their families behind. Then the man says, "You're next." He said there was a sharpshooter in town named Lightning Peterson. Is it true that you were afraid of his reputation? And then shot him the night before the duel. The sheriff was in a panic. The man said Lightning Peterson would be here soon. Maybe he'll continue the duel. The sheriff got scared. He promised to pay $500. The man didn't agree. Peterson's a powerful man. It took $1,200 to get him offline. The sheriff just gave him his wallet. Next up was this old lady. She says she remarried after her husband died. If he comes back to life, she'll have 2 husbands, so as not to get into trouble. So she paid $200. Then this woman, she didn't want her alcoholic father back. The man sees that she's pretty, so he gives her a free ride. And so it went on, one by one. Nobody wanted to bring back their dead relatives. The men simply lined them up to pay and register the names of their loved ones. After all these operations, the man made a fortune. He drove his carriage to a cemetery in the countryside and called the puppy from afar. And for the great show of playing dead, he rewarded it with a large bone. Then his companion appeared. It turned out he was playing the role of the bartender's brother. They checked their itinerary and headed to the next town to repeat the trick. Before leaving, the man comes to the cemetery.
Real sorry, friend. I'm real sorry that I actually couldn't perform what I laid claim to. Rest in peace. All of you.
Then they drove off in a wagon. Soon after, the coffin boards in the cemetery gave way. The town's dead were crawling out of the dirt. They decided to go back home to talk to their families.